All right, welcome. Today, we're going to tackle a question that sounds incredibly simple, but is actually at the very heart of how our entire economy works. We all use money, right? Every single day. But have you ever really stopped and thought, what's the price of it? Let's dive in, because the answer affects, well, pretty much everything. So, really, what is the price of a dollar? It's kind of a weird question when you think about it, isn't it? A dollar is worth, well, a dollar. But in the world of economics, money is treated like any other good out there. It gets borrowed, it gets lent, and that means it has a price. And you've got to understand this price because it's the number that is quietly steering the entire global economy. And here it is, the big reveal. The price of money is the interest rate. So think about it this way. If you want to borrow money, the interest rate is what you pay for that privilege. But it's also the price you pay for just holding cash. Every dollar sitting in your wallet is a dollar that you're not putting into something that earns you more money, like a bond. That potential earning you missed out on, that's what we call the opportunity cost, and it is absolutely key to this whole story. Okay, so to figure out how this price gets set, we have to look at it just like any other market. And that means it has a supply side and a demand side. So let's start with demand. Why do we, as people, as businesses, why do we want to hold on to money in the first place? Well, it really just boils down to a few core reasons. First, and most obviously, you need it to buy things. It's our medium of exchange. You can't buy coffee without it. Second, it's a store of wealth. You can stash it away today and spend it next month or next year, and you know it'll still be valuable. And, that really ties into the third point. It has a known, stable value. It's reliable. This brings us to a fundamental choice that we are all making all the time, whether we realize it or not. Holding on to cash gives you what's called perfect liquidity. It's right there, ready to be spent in an instant. The downside? It earns you absolutely nothing. A big fat zero. On the other hand, you could buy something like a bond. The benefit there? It earns interest. Your money actually grows. The catch, of course, is that it's less liquid. You can't just walk into a store and buy groceries with a government bond. You have to sell it first to turn it back into cash. And that trade-off leads us to a really simple but incredibly powerful rule. When the interest rates on bonds go up, the opportunity cost of just holding on to cash gets way higher. I mean, why would you keep your money as cash earning nothing when you could be getting a great return from a bond? It just makes sense, right? So as interest rates rise, people and companies would rather buy bonds, and the overall demand to hold money goes down. Okay, so that's the demand side of the equation. Now let's flip over and look at the supply side. Who's actually in charge here? Who creates and controls the amount of money flowing through the economy? The big player, the one pulling the strings, is a country's central bank. You've heard of them, the Federal Reserve in the US, the European Central Bank, and so on. Now, for our purposes here, we're going to think of the money supply as being fixed at any one moment in time, because it's the central bank that decides exactly how much money it wants to have in circulation. So how do they do that? Well, one of their most powerful tools has a fancy name: open market operations. But the idea is actually pretty simple. To increase the money supply, the central bank goes out and buys assets, usually government bonds, from regular commercial banks. So the commercial banks hand over their bonds, and in exchange, they get brand new cash from the central bank. That cash then floods into the banking system, ready to be lent out, and just like that, the total money supply grows. All right, so now we have our two forces. On one side, you've got the public's demand for money, which drops as interest rates climb, and on the other side, you've got the money supply, which is set by the central bank. So let's put them together and see what happens when they finally meet. And hey, don't let the idea of a market graph scare you off. We can picture the market just like the market for anything else: avocados, cars, you name it. It's all about finding that sweet spot, that balancing point where the buyers and sellers, or in this case, the holders and suppliers, are all on the same page. So let's build this thing out. Up the side, on the vertical axis, we've got our price, which is the nominal interest rate. And across the bottom, on the horizontal axis, we've got the quantity of money. Now, the money supply? That's just a straight vertical line, because remember, the central bank just picks a quantity and sticks with it. And then you have the money demand curve, sloping downwards, which just shows that as the price, the interest rate, goes down, people want to hold on to more and more money. And right there, where those two lines cross, bam! That's it. That's our equilibrium interest rate. We'll call it I0. At this one specific rate, the amount of money people want to hold is exactly equal to the amount of money the central bank has put out there. The market is in balance. And the really cool thing is, this market basically fixes itself. Let's say the interest rate is way too high. Well, nobody wants to hold cash then. They'd all rather buy bonds to get that high return. This creates a surplus of money. So what do people do? They use that extra cash to buy more bonds, which pushes bond prices up and, you guessed it, interest rates back down toward equilibrium. And if the rate is too low, everybody wants cash, creating a shortage. So people sell their bonds to get more cash, which pushes bond prices down and interest rates back up. The market always finds its way home. Okay, but hold on. There is one final, crucial twist to this whole story. The interest rate we've been talking about this whole time, the one you see on the news, that's the nominal interest rate. But to really understand the true cost of borrowing or the true return on saving, we have to talk about inflation. This is where we need to understand the difference between the nominal rate and the real interest rate. The real rate is what you actually earn after you factor in inflation. So, for example, if your savings account is paying you a 3% nominal rate, but inflation is running at 2%, your real return, your actual increase in purchasing power, is only 1%. This whole idea has a name. It's called the Fisher effect, and this table breaks it down perfectly. Let's walk through this. Imagine you're a lender, and at the end of the day, you want to make a 2% real return on your money. Now, look at the first column. If everyone expects inflation to be low, maybe 1%, then you only need to charge a 3% nominal interest rate to get your 2% real return. But now, look at the second column. If we're in a high inflation world and everyone expects prices to go up by 5%, you have to charge a whopping 7% nominal rate just to get that very same 2% real return. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that the nominal interest rates we see out in the world every day aren't just a simple story of supply and demand. They are also massively influenced by what the market expects inflation to do in the future. Those expectations get baked right into the price of money today. So the next time you hear on the news that a central bank is making a move, changing its policy, you'll know exactly what's going on. They're adjusting the supply of money to try and influence its price, the interest rate. Now that you know the mechanics of supply, demand, and the huge role of inflation expectations, you've got the tools to see the economy in a completely new light. The only question left is, what will you be watching for?